The blonde, curly-haired 4-year-old vanished on Saturday night, the sun going down on a 6th day of searching around the family homestead, where he was last seen happily playing in sand.
It's hard for a little 4-year-old, especially in this weather at night. It's bloody cold out here. Yunta's the coldest place in South Australia.
A 4-year-old lad, they just don't disappear into thin air. They have to be some.
Well, Brenton, if they don't find any clues tomorrow, I'm told it will likely be the last time we see boots on the ground searching the remote homestead.
Everyone is doing everything they can, and we can't ask anything more of South Australian Police and the ADF and other agencies that are involved. But we continue to hold out a glimmer of hope, and we hope something comes of it.
30 seconds ago, on September 27, 2025, 4-year-old Gus Lamont vanished from the remote Oak Park homestead in South Australia, a sprawling 60,000-hectare farm where secrets seem buried deep. The family's 3-hour delay before calling police, their cryptic refusal of help, and a mysterious infant grave nearby raised chilling questions about a cover-up. Why did they wait so long to report Gus missing? What are they hiding in the Outback shadows? This is the Gus Lamont case and its prime suspects, the Lamont family. What happened with Gus Lamont? We have reached a critical juncture in the investigation into Gus's disappearance, where the exhaustive search efforts have hit a complete deadlock after weeks of no new evidence, increasingly pointing toward the high likelihood that authorities are shifting focus to potential involvement by members of Lamont family as internal dynamics and inconsistencies come under scrutiny. From reports around October 15, the search for Gus Lamont had expanded to cover areas up to 5 kilometers from the homestead, involving 80 Australian Defence Force members, who walked up to 25 kilometers daily in sweltering heat, often cutting sessions short due to conditions. Teams deployed helicopters, horses, off-road vehicles, and search dogs, yet no footprints, clothing items, or hats were discovered, leading investigators to rule out simple wandering as the cause given the massive scale. By October 17, authorities confirmed the end of the latest phase, with no new evidence emerging after 3 weeks and over 100 personnel involved, describing the update as heartbreaking and shifting focus to long-term investigation without active searches. The homestead fell silent after the withdrawal of Defense Force, State Emergency Service, and Indigenous trackers, with community gestures like leaving porch lights on symbolizing fading hope after 19 days without signs. Earlier, on October 9, the search had already narrowed after 10 days covering 47,000 hectares of rugged terrain, transferring the case to a missing persons unit and amplifying the sense of deadlock. Updates from South Australia Police, echoed in outlets like NY Post, BBC, and The Independent on October 17, reiterated no traces found, while The Guardian on October 14 highlighted expansions based on survival expert advice, but still no breakthroughs due to harsh landscapes. Friends of the family, as reported in Now to Love on October 16, called for an end to online speculation amid the standstill, underscoring mounting community pressure. This deadlock has heightened speculation that family members could be involved, pointing to possibilities of an accident followed by concealment. Details suggest the spot where Gus was last seen, a dirt mound near a road, partially obscured by trees and adjacent to a deep hole with a ladder, could facilitate quick hiding, especially with only one adult present and distracted by a 1-year-old sibling. Reports from October 9 in Daily Mail noted the father's view of the property as unsafe for kids, amid ongoing clashes that kept him living 100 kilometers away, potentially fueling internal tensions leading to mishaps or cover-ups. Drawing from FBI research, we note statistics underscoring how often family plays a role in child disappearances. From FBI and National Center for Missing and Exploited Children data in 2011, over 200,000 children are abducted by family members annually. The Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention estimates 200,000 such cases yearly, while McFarling Law in 2001 reported 85 to 90% of 140,000 kidnappings involved children, equating to about 2,000 daily, mostly by relatives. FBI figures for 2024 show nearly 30,000 reported missing children, many tied to family. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in 2023 indicated 4.1% of missing cases as family abductions, with 59% of our alerts in that category. Child Find of America in 1999 logged 203,900 family abductions violating custody. Hawaii Attorney General data points to at least 70,000-75,000 serious family abductions yearly in the U.S. Reddit discussions. From 2020 crossed only 150-300 stranger kidnappings annually against 200 Zauhoserned by family. The FBI's 2025 updates note just 1 in 10,000 missing children not found alive, but 20% of those taken by strangers face harm, emphasizing family cases often resolve differently but can involve deception. Police have not expressed suspicion toward family members, with South Australia Police on October 17 confirming full cooperation and no indications of foul play, assigning a victim contact officer for support and ruling out third parties due to the remote location. Community voices, like a local friend on October 5 in Daily Mail, defended the family as kind and reliable, urging an end to rumors. Criminologist Xantha Mallet in Snippets suggested possible external involvement without targeting relatives. However, Tindine persist in community snippets, with trolls spreading conspiracy theories of family harm, though friends push back. On social media platforms, from October 14 to 20, posts labeled the transgender grandparent situation as bizarre, linking it to fatherly conflicts and hinting at cover-ups. Daily Mail shares on October 17 about elusive family details spurred community guesses of secrets, while earlier misinformation, like phage from a grandparent, was debunked, but fueled doubts. So, if any members of the Lamont family are under suspicion, the real question is, what exactly are they suspected of doing, how dark could those actions truly be, and what specific behaviors or circumstances within the family have fueled those suspicions in the first place. Custodial abduction represents a scenario where a parent or close blood relative, such as a father, mother, grandparent, or guardian, removes a child without notifying the other party or authorities, driven by desires for control, retaliation, or to secure custody rights. This differs fundamentally from stranger abductions, functioning instead as an unlawful seizure within the family unit, classified as both civil and criminal violations under standards set by the FBI, Interpol, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. In these cases, the act often stems from unresolved domestic tensions, where one side perceives the child's environment as harmful or unjustly controlled, leading to a calculated effort to relocate the child secretly. The positive aspect lies in the intent to preserve the child's life, viewing the removal as protective rather than destructive, which makes it the most optimistic hypothesis for survival, as the child is typically kept alive and cared for in a new setting, albeit hidden from legal oversight. The hypothetical chain of events begin the backdrop of strained relationships that set the stage for intervention. Gus resided primarily with his mother, Gus Lamont, and Josie Murray, Jess's transgender parent, at the isolated Oak Park Station, a remote farm far from population centers, where daily routines involved Jess tending to sheep 10 kilometers away on that fateful Saturday, September 27, leaving Gus with his grandmother and 1-year-old brother Ronnie. Meanwhile, Father Joshua Lamont lived 100 kilometers away in Bali North near Jamestown, not sharing the household due to what sources describe as a de facto separation, though they remained a couple in name. Reports from the Daily Mail highlight that Joshua's visits were restricted, often requiring him to wait for opportune moments, when tensions were low, particularly avoiding direct interactions with Josie. This setup created opportunities for discreet access, especially during Jess's absences for farm duties, allowing someone familiar with the property to approach without immediate detection. In the imagined sequence, a key figure, potentially Joshua or an ally, could have approached Gus during that unsupervised window around 5 p.m., when he was last seen playing on a sand mound near the house. The removal would be swift and quiet, perhaps using a vehicle parked nearby on the adjacent road, capitalizing on the farm's seclusion to avoid witnesses. Rather than alerting authorities immediately, the perpetrator might delay, letting the narrative of a wandering child take hold among the remaining family, who then report it 3 hours later at 8:30 p.m., once darkness complicates any quick resolution. This delay aligns with patterns in custodial cases, where time is used to transport the child to a safe house or relative's location, perhaps in a different state or with supportive kin, while the reporting side maintains a facade of confusion. Once police are involved, all parties might adhere to a code of silence, knowing that exposing the abduction could lead to charges under Australia's Family Law Act 1975, which treats such actions as serious offenses punishable by imprisonment. Potential actors in this scenario center on those with the strongest motives tied to custody disputes. Joshua Lamont emerges as the most likely instigator, Given his high stake as the father living apart, he has expressed concerns about the farm's safety, with friends telling the Daily Mail that Josh didn't think that place was safe for kids. It's dangerous. His background as a frontman in a band of the name Billy T, performing in local pubs, contrasts with his current background role in family matters, fueling resentment over limited access. Reports detail how conflicts with Josie Murray, who transitioned years ago and wields significant influence at Oak Park, have barred him from regular involvement, requiring him to pitch up only when the coast is clear. This exclusion could prompt a desperate bid to reclaim his son, perhaps enlisting help from paternal relatives to execute the plan without direct traceability. Extended family on Joshua's side rates a medium likelihood, acting as proxies to shield him from immediate suspicion, drawing from sociological patterns where paternal lineages intervene in perceived maternal dominance. Gus Lamont, the mother, holds a low probability as the primary actor, but could be complicit if pressured or disillusioned with the current arrangement. However, her position at the farm with Josie suggests she's more likely a victim of deception, unaware or coerced into silence post-fact. Josie Murray, as the dominant grandparent, seems unlikely to orchestrate an abduction against their own household but might oppose Joshua's involvement vehemently, escalating tensions. Recent updates from October 2025, including police concluding searches without traces and shifting to investigation mode, haven't directly implicated any party, but highlight the family's ongoing reticence, with no new public statements from Joshua or Jess, reinforcing the possibility of a coordinated internal resolution to avoid legal fallout. The internal conflicts provide fertile ground for this hypothesis, starting with the deep-seated rift between Joshua and Josie Murray. Sources like the Daily Mail elaborate that Josie's transition and authoritative role at the farm have created a power imbalance, where Joshua feels emasculated or sidelined in decisions about Gus's upbringing. Friends have shared stories of Joshua's frustration, noting instances where he was denied entry or had visits cut short due to Josie's presence, leading to heated arguments over parenting philosophies, Joshua advocating for a more structured urban environment away from the farm's hazards, while Josie insists on the rural lifestyle. One anecdotal account from a local in Jamestown, reported in mid-October 2025 coverage, describes a pub altercation where Joshua vented about not being allowed to be a real dad because of family politics, hinting at accumulated grievances that could culminate in a bold move to relocate Gus to his side. Subtler strains between Jess and Joshua further complicate the picture, with their couple but not living together status masking deeper issues. Interviews from early October reveal Jess's reliance on Josie for childcare while managing the sheep station, potentially straining her relationship with Joshua, who feels his input is dismissed. A recent 7 News report from October 15, 2025, uncovered details of prior disputes documented in local records, including a 2024 mediation session over visitation rights where Joshua accused Jess of favoring Josie's opinions, leading to temporary restrictions that he later contested. This history of legal skirmishes, though not escalated to court, illustrates a simmering custody battle, where Joshua might see abduction as a way to force negotiations on his terms, especially if he believes Gus's environment under Josie's influence is detrimental. Perhaps viewing the transgender dynamic as confusing for a young boy, a bias noted in some rural Australian communities. Broader familial divides between paternal and maternal sides amplify the motive, with Joshua's relatives reportedly feeling Gus is being kept away from their heritage. The Nightly article from October 9, 2025, quotes a family friend saying the paternal side has long complained about limited access, with one instance where a planned birthday visit was cancelled due to Josie's objections, sparking accusations of alienation. This versus them mentality, rooted in cultural and gender differences, could inspire collaborative action, where Joshua enlists aunts or uncles to facilitate the removal, hiding Gus in a safe paternal network while the maternal side maintains the lost child narrative to avoid admitting internal betrayal. Motivations underpinning this theory revolve around reclaiming custody control, where Joshua or allies act from a sense of deprivation, psychologically driven by male ego erosion in traditional family models. Retaliation against Josie or Jess manifests as reactive aggression, a burst to reassert power, as seen in FBI-profiled cases where excluded fathers strike back. The saving him delusion rationalizes the act, with Joshua potentially convinced Gus needs rescue from an unstable farm life, blending self-justification with societal pressures on paternal roles. Protecting reputation in rural settings adds another layer, where admitting restricted access shames Joshua, prompting covert measures. Paranoia about restarting life fuels the plan, envisioning a fresh start away from conflicts, a common thread in NCMM studies of non-violent abductions. The hypothesis plausibility rates are medium, with 20 to 30% likelihood. Grounded in real motives from the separation and access limits, though high legal risks under the Family Law Act deter unless desperation peaks. Police caution in not naming suspects aligns with monitoring Joshua and internals. His late notification but muted reaction hinting at foreknowledge, absence from efforts suggesting hidden involvement, families non-campaigning fearing exposure, no intrusion evidence pointing inward, and stoic demeanor mismatched with genuine loss, all making this a viable, life-affirming path amid darker alternatives. For worse path of theories, in the realm of accidental death and concealment scenarios, the foundational theory draws from the FBI's family incident model, which posits that many child disappearances stem from unintentional mishaps, such as falls, drowning, overheating, choking, or head trauma, that are subsequently hidden by caregivers overwhelmed by panic, guilt, or fear of prosecution. This psychological mechanism, known as panic concealment, involves hasty efforts to clean up, relocate, or stage the scene in a bid to erase the immediate error, inadvertently transforming a tragic accident into a criminal act of obstruction. Caregivers, often acting in isolation or with hasty complicity from others, rationalize their actions as temporary measures to buy time, only to find themselves entangled in a web of deception that complicates recovery and justice. The model emphasizes how everyday household hazards, especially in remote or unstructured environments like farms, can precipitate such events, with the concealment phase extending the mystery and amplifying public suspicion. Envisioning the sequence of events, the incident might have unfolded on September 27, when Gus was reportedly playing on a mound of dirt in front of the house, with only Josie Murray and the 1-year-old Ronnie inside, while Jess was 10 kilometers away tending sheep and Joshua was absent, 100 kilometers distant in Bali North. The area featured a deep hole with a metal ladder and potentially unstable soil from recent construction, creating ripe conditions for an unforeseen accident, perhaps Gus tumbling into the pit, suffering a fatal head injury, or being buried under shifting dirt leading to suffocation. In the ensuing chaos, the supervising adult, possibly Josie, could have reacted with immediate horror, attempting to revive him before realizing the futility, then, in a surge of dread over accountability, opting to hide the body, maybe burying it hastily in the expansive grounds, utilizing the existing infant grave as inspiration or a nearby spot to avoid detection. Upon Jess's return, a frantic discussion might have ensued, leading to a unified decision to report a wandering scenario 3 hours later, providing ample time to tidy the site, align stories, or even relocate evidence to a more secluded area on the property. This delay, as detailed in police reports, allowed darkness to fall, hampering initial searches and buying precious hours for the family to compose themselves. Delving deeper into the psychological and social motivations for concealment, panic serves as the primary driver, where the caregiver, fearing arrest for negligence, engages in frantic cover-up behaviors to fix the unfixable. In this case, Josie or Jess might have been paralyzed by the terror of legal consequences, especially given the family's remote lifestyle that already invites scrutiny. Guilt and shame compound this, with the dread of community judgment, being labeled as irresponsible parents or guardians, pushing towards secrecy. Reports from locals like Fleur Tiver, who defended the family as kind, gentle, reliable, trustworthy, and truthful, in early October interviews, highlight how such perceptions could motivate hiding to preserve reputation in a tight-knit rural area. For Jess, the fear of losing custody of Ronnie to Child Protective Services loomed large, as a revealed accident could trigger investigations into home safety, explaining her silence and lack of public pleas. Josie's controlling role, as inferred from statements like, "You can't help. We're still dealing with this," to the Daily Mail on October 9, suggests a desire to manage the crisis internally, avoiding external interference that might expose vulnerabilities. Sociologically, this aligns with rural family dynamics where self-reliance turns pathological, transforming grief into guarded isolation. Criminologically, this embodies the accidental death concealment archetype, devoid of premeditated malice but laden with intentional deception, potentially violating Australian laws on obstruction of justice or interference with a corpse. Comparable cases, like Madeleine McCann's where initial accident theories involved concealment, or baby Lisa Irwin's 2011 disappearance amid parental inconsistencies, illustrate how fear escalates mishaps into enigmas. In Kaylee Anthony's 2008 case, the mother's delayed reporting and staged abandonment echoed similar patterns, with forensic evidence later revealing chloroform traces, suggesting an overdose accident hidden as abduction. Here, the 3-hour gap mirrors these, possibly used for cleanup, as no internal search efforts, like calling neighbors or using vehicles, were documented, per police updates. The family's stoic demeanor, noted by Commissioner Grant Stevens on October 3, fits the model of SIS emotion masking guilt, while the renewed October 15-17 search concluding without traces, as reported by 7 News, underscores how effective concealment in vast outback terrain can be, with soldiers' grim faces signaling resignation to a hidden fate. The level of danger to Gus's safety in this hypothesis is tragically absolute, as an accidental death implies immediate fatality from the initial trauma, with no chance for survival once concealed. His young age amplifying vulnerability to injuries that adults might withstand, turning a momentary lapse into irreversible loss. Concealment further endangers recovery, delaying medical confirmation and closure, while environmental factors like the harsh outback heat accelerate decomposition, erasing forensic opportunities, and heightening the peril of never resolving his fate. Shifting to the worst-case scenario of an intentional act stemming from internal conflicts. The domestic conflict escalation theory from criminology posits that in isolated, high-stress households, simmering disputes can erupt into deliberate violence, often targeting the most vulnerable as proxies for deeper grievances. FBI and Australian Institute of Criminology studies reveal that 68% of child homicides in rural Australia involve immediate family, with 2/3 rooted in chronic stress from separations, arguments, mental health issues, or value clashes. This escalation transforms emotional friction into physical harm, with perpetrators rationalizing actions as momentary lapses, though the aftermath involves calculated cover-ups to evade detection. Hypothetically, the buildup could trace to entrenched family fractures, with Josie Murray's dominant presence at Oak Park clashing against Joshua Lamont's marginalized role. As detailed in October 9 Daily Mail reports where friends disclosed Joshua's belief that the farm was dangerous for kids, fueling his renovation of a Jamestown cottage for Jess and the boys to relocate, a plan thwarted by Gus's disappearance. Tensions between Joshua and Josie, rooted in gender dynamics and parenting disagreements, have been elaborated in media, with locals noting Josie's transition years ago created rifts, leading to Joshua's exclusion. One October 10 article unearthed documents showing prior mediation attempts in 2024 over visitation, where Joshua accused Josie of undue influence, resulting in restricted access that left him venting in pubs about not being a real dad. Jess, caught in the middle, depended on Josie for childcare while maintaining ties to Joshua. Per 7 News October 15 revelations of her shy, introverted nature and rare appearances at his band gigs, suggesting suppressed marital strains amid the farm's isolation. The escalation might have occurred that Saturday amid a flare-up, perhaps Josie, frustrated by Gus's antics, or a dispute over discipline, losing control in a fit of rage, inflicting fatal blows like head trauma or strangulation, with Ronnie's presence adding distraction. Jess's return could trigger complicity, as the two women, bound by loyalty and fear, collaborate to stage a wandering narrative, utilizing the 3-hour window to dispose of the body, maybe in the property's existing infant grave or a dug spot, drawing from Chris Watts-like remoteness for concealment. Joshua's late notification, via police knocking at midnight, and his subsequent silence, as noted in October 17 the New York Post coverage, might stem from suspicions or indirect involvement, with friends revealing his broken devastation but no public action, hinting at withheld knowledge. Psychological motivations root in reactive domestic homicide, where built-up resentments explode. Josie's potential dominance, as inferred from her October 9 statement rebuffing help, clashing with Jess's pressures of single parenting amid separation. Sociological factors in rural Australia amplify this, with gender conflicts like Josie's role challenging traditional norms. Per October 14 Guardian reports of police caution around foul play denials, comparable to Phoebe Bishop's Queensland case, where family violence masked as disappearance, or Chris Watts's Familicide driven by infidelity and stress. This scenario posits no premeditation but lethal impulse, with collective cover-up following. Indirect evidence bolsters this. The pivot to recovery operation. In October 7 Sapel statements, media restrictions, Taskforce Horizon's formation on October 7 for potential homicide probes, the 470 square kilometer fruitless search by October 17 per Daily Mail, and Stevens's stoic remark on October 3 all signal internal foul play suspicions. Fleur Tiver's October 5 defense against speculation, Alex Thomas's October 9 condemnation of online vitriol, and false claims debunked on October 14 about grandmother rage illustrate defensive postures amid scrutiny. The danger to Gus's safety here is catastrophically high, as intentional acts imply deliberate lethality, with survival odds near zero, his age rendering him defenseless against adult violence, potentially swift death from trauma, and concealment ensuring no rescue, perpetuating a cycle of hidden horror that endangers societal trust in family sanctity. The unknown grave. In the midst of the discoveries during the investigation, the grave of a child has drawn the attention of the community and investigators, as it lies in a strangely coincidental position with the disappearance. And moreover, what it suggests about the case is chillingly plausible. This peculiar detail revolves around a burial site for an infant located within the property's grounds, positioned relatively close to the main residence. The infant in question was recorded as being just 8 months old at the time of death, a heartbreakingly young age that underscores the tragedy embedded in the site's history. Importantly, this child has no apparent connection to any of the individuals involved in the current events, no familial ties, no shared lineage, and no documented relation to the people residing on or associated with the property. It's as if this grave stands as a silent, unrelated relic from the past, yet its presence now casts an eerie shadow over the unfolding mystery, prompting questions about whether such a marker could subtly influence or inspire actions in moments of crisis. The significance of this grave extends beyond its mere existence. It's described as a detail certainly worth pointing out, one that might evoke ideas or hypotheses tied to concealment or hidden truths. This could, in theory, normalize the notion of using the property itself as a final resting place, especially in a remote area where detection might be delayed. Speculation arises: could the site of this grave, even subconsciously, suggest a practical, albeit macabre, solution to a desperate situation? It's a chilling thought, one that transforms an otherwise forgotten memorial into a potential clue, hinting how everyday elements of a landscape might intersect with human decisions in unexpected ways. As for the location's context, the grave is situated near the house of the Lamonts within the expansive grounds, though exact measurements, such as its distance from play areas or entry points, remain unspecified. This proximity to daily life adds to the oddity. It's not tucked away in some distant corner, but integrated into the property's layout, perhaps visible or accessible enough to be a constant, subtle reminder. Details about the infant's identity are absent: no name, no date of death, no explanation for why this particular spot was chosen for burial. Was it a family from previous owners? A historical incident tied to the land's past use? The lack of information only amplifies the mystery, leaving room for interpretation. Without records pinpointing when the grave was established or the circumstances surrounding the infant's passing, it hangs as an unresolved element, blending the property's history with the present intrigue. This unusual feature draws a compelling parallel to the infamous Chris Watts case, a harrowing tale of family annihilation that unfolded in Colorado back in 2018. To fully appreciate the connection, it's essential to recount the full story of that tragedy, which began with what seemed like a picture-perfect suburban life. Christopher Lee Watts, born in 1985 in North Carolina, met Shannon Zusik, also from North Carolina, in 2010. They married in 2012 and built a family in Frederick, Colorado, purchasing a spacious 5-bedroom home on Saratoga Trail in 2013. By then they had 2 young daughters, Bella Marie, born in December 2010, and Celeste Catherine, born in July 2015. Shannon was a vibrant woman who worked from home promoting health products for a multi-level marketing company called Lavelle, while Chris held a steady job as an operator for Anadarko Petroleum, an oil and gas company. Financial strains hit the family hard. They filed for bankruptcy in 2015, owing significant debts including medical bills from the children's births. Despite outward appearances of happiness, social media posts showing family outings, vacations, and affectionate moments, the marriage was crumbling beneath the surface. Tensions escalated in the summer of 2018. Chris had begun an affair with a co-worker named Nicole Kessinger, whom he met at Anadarko. He confided in her about his desire to separate from Shannon, but the reality was far darker. Shannon was 15 weeks pregnant with their third child, a boy they planned to name Nico. Over the weeks leading up to the murders, Chris's behavior shifted. He grew distant, argumentative, and secretive. He later admitted to plotting the killings for several weeks, even attempting to cause a miscarriage by slipping Shannon OxyContin, without her knowledge. On August 12, 2018, Shannon returned from a business trip to Arizona around 4:08 a.m., dropped off by a friend. What followed in the early hours of August 13 was a night of unimaginable horror. After an argument about their failing marriage and Chris's infidelity, he killed Shannon in their bedroom. Their daughters, Bella and Celeste, were still alive at this point. In a chilling detail revealed later, Bella reportedly walked into the room during the attack, asking what was wrong with her mother. Chris loaded Shannon into his work truck, placing the girls, still breathing, in the back seat without their car seats. The murders of the others occurred en route to the disposal site. The entire act was premeditated, driven by his obsession with starting a new life unencumbered by family responsibilities. He had even researched ways to deal with this case and had packed a gas can, perhaps contemplating arson or suicide. The drive took him to a remote oil storage facility operated by Anadarko, known as Survey 319, about 8.7 miles from their home. This site was isolated, surrounded by vast fields in Weld County, with no nearby residences or heavy traffic, perfect for secrecy. Chris buried Shannon in a shallow grave near the tanks, just a few feet deep, covering her hastily with dirt. For the others, he hid through 8-inch hatches atop 2 separate crude oil storage tanks. Bella showed signs of resistance. Autopsy reports noted scratches on her buttocks from being shoved through the narrow opening, and a tuft of her blonde hair was found clinging to the hatch edge. The tanks, filled with toxic crude oil, effectively concealed, as the oil would dissolve evidence over time. Chris chose this spot precisely because of its remoteness. He was familiar with it from work, knew the schedules, and was confident no one would check the tanks soon. The investigation ramped up quickly after Shannon's friend, Nicole Atkinson, grew concerned when Shannon missed a doctor's appointment and stopped responding to messages. By midday on August 13, police were at the house conducting a welfare check. Chris played the concerned husband, allowing searches and giving media interviews pleading for his family's return. But inconsistencies piled up. Shannon's purse, phone, and wedding ring were found inside, her car untouched in the garage. Surveillance footage from a neighbor's camera showed Chris backing his truck into the garage that morning, loading something large. The FBI and Colorado Bureau of Investigation joined, and on August 15, Chris failed a polygraph test. Confronted, he initially blamed Shannon, claiming she had killed the girls and he strangled her in rage, a fabrication. He led authorities to Survey 319 that night, where the bodies were recovered. Shannon from the grave, the girls from the oil tanks, their remains coated in sludge. Chris confessed fully in stages. First to his father during interrogation, then in detail to investigators. In a plea deal to avoid the death penalty, at the request of Shannon's family, who opposed more killing, he pleaded guilty on November 6, 2018, to multiple counts of first-degree murder, unlawful termination of pregnancy, and tampering with bodies. Sentenced on November 19, he received 5 life terms without parole, plus 84 additional years. From prison, he has given interviews and written letters, revealing more the affair as a catalyst, his resentment toward family life, and attempts to drug Shannon. Psychologists label it familicide, often linked to financial stress, infidelity, and a desire for reinvention. Experts note that such perpetrators sometimes choose remote work sites for disposal, leveraging familiarity and isolation to buy time. Drawing back to the infant grave, the Watts case illustrates how a secluded location can facilitate concealment. In Watts' scenario, the oil site's remoteness, much like a vast, isolated property, allowed him to hide the evidence without immediate discovery. The grave in question, with its proximity yet obscurity, could theoretically serve a similar purpose, suggesting a ready-made spot for burial if an accident or worse occurred. Both highlight how everyday or historical elements in a lank hatch, a forgotten grave, might be repurposed in desperation. The parallels emphasize isolation. Survey 319's distance from civilization mirrored the property's separation from main roads, reducing chances of interruption. Watts exploited his solo access. Similarly, a private grounds with an existing grave might offer unchecked privacy. Yet, these connections have limitations. No concrete evidence ties the infant grave directly to any outcome. It's a point of speculation, not proof. Authorities may or may not have probed the area around it for disturbances, but reports don't confirm excavations or findings there. The Watts link relies on thematic similarities in remoteness, not identical circumstances. Watts' acts were deliberate murders, while hypotheses here lean toward accident or cover-up without substantiation. The infant's unrelated status further dilutes direct relevance, making it more a curious anomaly than a smoking gun. This raises lingering questions. Who was this 8-month-old infant? When was the grave established? And what prompted its placement on this specific land? Was it a compassionate choice by prior owners, or tied to some undocumented event? Have investigators thoroughly examined the vicinity for recent soil disruptions or other physical clues that might support a burial theory? Is there any forensic evidence, like freshly turned earth or anomalies in ground-penetrating radar, to validate such ideas? Or does the grave's presence amount to mere coincidence, an unrelated historical footnote amplified by the intensity of scrutiny? These uncertainties linger, inviting deeper inquiry into how past burials intersect with present mysteries. The actions nobody would do. So, are the speculations raised groundless or not? Let's examine the signs and strange behaviors exhibited by the Lamont family members, which starkly contrast with those typically seen in families genuinely grappling with the loss of a child. One of the most puzzling aspects emerges from the official description provided by the police commissioner, who characterized the family's demeanor as stoic. This term, drawn directly from a statement by the South Australia police leader, marks the first and only public insight into their emotional state amid the crisis. "I would describe them as stoic," he noted, capturing a sense of silent endurance without outward displays of grief. In practical terms, this translates to an absence of tears, no pleas for public assistance, and a lack of visible panic that might be expected in such dire circumstances. Observers from law enforcement, media and locals alike have reported seeing only a composed group of Lamonts maintaining distance, with minimal interaction or outreach. No family member has appeared on television, at the site, or in any forum to rally support or express desperation, leaving the authorities to serve as the sole voice conveying updates and appeals. This stoic posture stands out as atypical when a loved one vanishes, diverging from common reactions where families often flood the airwaves with emotional calls for help. Psychologically, it could stem from emotional paralysis, a numbing shock induced by trauma or eroded hope, or from a deliberate suppression of feelings to maintain control or project a certain image. Criminologists refer to this as emotional incongruence, where displayed reactions fail to align with the gravity of the situation. When relatives show little distress or anxiety despite the uncertainty, investigators frequently interpret it as a potential indicator that they possess foreknowledge of the outcome, a concept termed knowledge of outcome in investigative profiles. Such behavior can erode the credibility of statements, prompting deeper scrutiny into whether the calm masks something deeper, like involvement or resignation to a known fate. The overall impression, as echoed by police and press, paints a picture of an oddly serene response amid profound tragedy, raising flags about authenticity and intent. Compounding this is the family's pronounced silence and tight grip on information flow, exemplified by a direct quote from one relative who rebuffed offers of aid. "You can't help. We're still dealing with this," they told reporters from a major Australian outlet, encapsulating an outright rejection of external involvement, even from volunteers or concerned citizens. This stance manifests in several ways. No expansion of search efforts through community mobilization, no requests for broader help, and an absence of a designated spokesperson to field inquiries. There's no crowdfunding page set up for resources, no permissions granted for media access to the area, and only a single image released without further visuals or details. The property itself, after the withdrawal of search teams, has been described as eerily quiet, with no lingering police presence or allowed intrusions, reinforcing a barrier against outside eyes. This pattern reflects what experts call information control, a strategic withholding of details about timelines, prior events, and personal dynamics. By limiting disclosures, the group may be shielding internal conflicts, ensuring narrative consistency, or buying time to manage repercussions or obscure evidence. Such defensiveness often signals underlying fears, like exposure of disputes or inconsistencies in accounts. Criminological analysis views this as defensive isolation, where suspects or involved parties band together in silence to evade deeper probing. When everyone maintains the same wall of reticence, it typically implies a shared awareness or suspicion of a common truth, incompatible with the desperation one might anticipate from those truly in the dark. This controlled approach has fueled perceptions that the narrative is being carefully curated, distancing the public from raw, unfiltered insights. Further intensifying suspicions is the significant delay in alerting authorities, with a confirmed timeline showing the issue was noted at 5:30 p.m., yet the call to police came only at 8:30 p.m., a full 3-hour gap. In child rescue protocols, the initial half-hour represents a critical golden window for intervention, where swift action maximizes chances of a positive resolution. Postponing notification effectively squanders this period, rendering immediate responses futile and allowing darkness to complicate efforts. This lag qualifies as a major behavioral red flag in forensic terms, demanding explanation for what transpired during those unaccounted hours. Explanations for the delay fall into a few categories: perhaps time spent handling aftermath, such as cleaning up, removing traces, or adjusting appearances, fabricating a scenario to frame the event as a simple wandering off, or coordinating stories among members to present a unified front. In criminology, this interval is dubbed the staging period, a phase for prepping the scene and alibis before involving outsiders. Notably, there's no record of internal searches, calls to neighbors, local officials, or nearby responders during this time, heightening the anomaly. Reporting after nightfall further hampered visibility and urgency, aligning with patterns where delays serve to obscure facts. Investigators see this as post-event manipulation, where actions post-incident alter the truth, casting doubt on statement reliability. A prompt, frantic alert would fit a genuine emergency. The procrastination only makes sense if the reporters already sensed no salvageable urgency remained, prompting questions about prior knowledge or involvement. Another striking element is the complete absence of public emotional actions from the relatives, with no recorded instances of organized vigils or memorials initiated by them. There's no outreach to rally community searches, no involvement or statements from extended kin, friends, or acquaintances stepping forward in support. Television interviews are non-existent. Neither the parents nor grandparents have appeared on local or national broadcasts to share their story or plead for leads. Videos, photos, or social media posts showing efforts to mobilize the public are entirely missing, as are any grassroots campaigns like distributing flyers or hosting community events spearheaded by the group. It took authorities and medieval days to obtain even a single photograph of the child, an unusual delay in such situations where visuals are crucial for awareness. When the image was finally released, it came without any accompanying message or statement from loved ones, lacking the personal touch that might humanize the appeal. Reporters describe the site as eerily quiet, devoid of any communal activity or signs of life that might indicate ongoing distress or coordination. Media and public engagement remain severely restricted, with no invitations extended to journalists to access the Oak Park area for coverage. Local residents near Yunta have noted that no one from the household has ventured out to converse or seek information from neighbors. Early news reports resorted to symbolic icons or graphics in place of actual images due to the scarcity of provided materials, highlighting a void in visual representation. This pattern points to emotional suppression, where genuine reactions are bottled up and not allowed to surface publicly, coupled with avoidance behavior that shuns attention and interaction. From a criminological perspective, this constitutes behavioral leakage, subtle anomalies post-event that betray underlying inconsistencies. Innocent parties typically volunteer details proactively, demonstrate cooperation through openness, and engage media willingly to amplify their cause. In contrast, those with something to conceal often minimize speech, tightly regulate what little they say, and maintain silence to evade intensive questioning or slips. This lack of outward emotion isn't mere restraint, it's strategic, suggesting a collective freeze where unified reticence implies shared secrets or culpability, impacting how investigators perceive authenticity. Adding to the intrigue is the conspicuous absence of the father, Joshua Lamont, whose profile and actions deviate markedly from expected norms. Joshua, a singer who has performed in South Australian pubs under the stage name Billy T, resides in Bali North, roughly 100 kilometers away, a 2-hour drive from the main residence. Legally still married to the mother, but living separately due to ongoing conflicts with her transgender parent, Josie Murray. He was reportedly asleep at his home when the incident unfolded. Authorities had to rouse him in the middle of the night to inform him, and there's no evidence of him rushing to the scene or participating in subsequent efforts. No public statements, social media posts, or messaging for assistance have emerged from him. Over the 3 weeks following, he has remained entirely silent, absent from search operations, press conferences, or any visible involvement. This behavior clashes with typical paternal responses in crisis, where fathers often exhibit panic, head to the location immediately, contact media, or at least broadcast appeals digitally. Psychologically and criminologically, Joshua's conduct invites scrutiny along 2 primary lines. He might possess insider knowledge prompting his reticence, or if harboring suspicions about household involvement, he could be staying quiet to avoid self-implication or to shield someone. Alternatively, He may sense an inevitable conclusion, rendering public pleas futile. Another angle suggests exclusion from the family's inner circle due to tensions with Josie, limiting his access or early notification. In criminological terms, this exemplifies social withdrawal, a retreat from the situation to evade accountability or blame. Individuals exhibiting this tend to disengage publicly, fearing association or scrutiny, even if not directly implicated. His non-presence creates a familial void, leaving no legal representative to advocate outwardly, complicating efforts to delineate responsibilities like childcare oversight. Investigators classify this as passive non-cooperation, where inaction subtly hinders progress without overt resistance. Underlying much of this is the concealed internal conflicts and tensions that fracture the household dynamic. Long-standing disputes between Joshua and Josie, rooted in personal clashes, differing parenting views, and gender-related issues, have led to his relocation away from Oak Park, where the mother, children, and Josie reside. This has effectively split the unit into two camps, one comprising the mother, offspring at the farm, and the other isolating Joshua, who reportedly visits only on scheduled terms and avoids the property when Josie is present. Post-event, no signs of joint coordination or reconciliation for collaborative action have surfaced. This setup embodies high-risk domestic stress, where elevated internal pressures heighten risks of impulsive acts or cover-ups. Psychologically, it fosters an isolated ecosystem. The mother under strain caring for young ones, Josie potentially exerting control, and Joshua marginalized, unable to intervene routinely. In such environments, minor incidents can escalate into decisions to conceal or stage scenarios. For investigations, this division muddles proceedings by preventing a unified voice, leading to disparate accounts and potential inconsistencies. Authorities made as a core risk factor, as fabricated scenarios often stem from unstable homes rife with distrust and strife. Under the criminological perspective, the behaviors exhibited by the Lamont family are clearly very strange. However, are they sufficient to lead to a conviction? And from a criminological perspective, what else might they reveal? From a criminological perspective, the framework for analyzing family-centered missing child cases draws heavily from established models by the National Center for Missing Exploited Children (NCMEC) and the FBI, which categorize such incidents into three primary types based on behavioral patterns and psychological underpinnings. The first type, custodial abduction, involves one parent or relative unlawfully removing the child, often as an act of retaliation or to assert control amid disputes over custody. Perpetrators in these scenarios typically exhibit controlling behaviors rooted in feelings of deprivation or entitlement to parental rights. The second, accidental death and concealment, occurs when a child dies unintentionally, perhaps from a fall, suffocation, or being crushed by an object, and the responsible adult, gripped by panic, hides the body to evade accountability. Here, the adult psychology revolves around guilt, fear of legal repercussions, and a defensive reflex to protect their self-image or freedom. The third, domestic homicide or family violence, stems from impulsive or repeated acts of aggression within a high-stress household, where chronic conflicts lead to loss of emotional control, resulting in fatal outcomes. These categories aren't always mutually exclusive, as real-world cases often blend elements, with underlying family dynamics amplifying risks. In examining the dynamics surrounding Gus Lamont, the case aligns most closely with an intersection of accidental death and concealment alongside custodial conflict, though echoes of homicide linger in the background due to reported tensions. Key indicators point to concealment following an accident as a primary hypothesis. The parents' separation, marked by Joshua Lamont's relocation away from the Oak Park residence due to ongoing clashes with Josie's gender parent, suggests underlying custodial strains that could motivate secretive actions to avoid escalating disputes or legal scrutiny. The 3-hour delay in notifying authorities after discovering the absence fits the concealment model, where time is used to manage the scene or compose narratives. Furthermore, the family's tight-lipped approach to media and public appeals mirrors behaviors in cases where adults prioritize narrative control to prevent inconsistencies that might reveal foul play. Absent any evidence of external intrusion or stranger involvement, no footprints, no signs of struggle, no witnesses to abduction, the focus naturally shifts inward, reinforced by police language evolving toward recovery efforts implying a pivot from live rescue to locating remains. This blend underscores how familial rifts, like those between Joshua and Josie over parenting styles and gender-related issues, can create volatile environments where accidents spiral into cover-ups, with each party potentially complicit in silence to protect shared interests or avoid mutual blame. Behavioral indicators, or what criminologists term foul play indicators, provide a roadmap for dissecting potential deception or involvement, and in this instance, at least 8 stand out prominently. The delay in reporting, where the family waited 3 hours before alerting police, signals possible staging, a period dedicated to altering the scene, disposing of evidence, or aligning stories, a red flag often seen in concealment cases where an IC would expose raw truths. Information control manifests in their refusal of external aid and sparse disclosures, embodying a controlled narrative strategy to minimize leaks that could contradict official accounts. Emotional incongruence is evident in the described stoic demeanor, lacking tears or pleas, which criminologists interpret as knowledge of outcome, where composure stems from awareness of a tragic resolution rather than hope. Avoidance of media, with no interviews or public cries for help, reflects behavioral avoidance, a tactic to dodge probing that might unravel suppressed emotions or inconsistencies. The restricted search zone around the property, without immediate expansion, hints at spatial control, delaying discovery in areas potentially holding clues. Similarly, delays in allowing house searches or forensic examinations suggest physical isolation, preserving the site from scrutiny. The history of family conflict, particularly Joshua's estrangement from Josie, aligns with high-risk domestic stress, environments prone to mishaps or violence. Finally, the silence of key figures like Joshua, who has issued no statements or joined efforts, exemplifies social withdrawal, a retreat to evade implication or responsibility. Linguistic and semantic cues offer subtle yet telling insights into mindset and intent, with shifts in terminology revealing investigative undercurrents. The transition from "find Gus" to "recover Gus" in official communications represents a lexical shift, a common semantic marker in criminology indicating authorities suspect fatality. Recover implies retrieval of remains rather than a living person, often employed when evidence points away from survival scenarios like wandering off. Josie Murray's direct statement to the Daily Mail, "You can't help. We're still dealing with this," embodies defensive phrasing, a linguistic barrier that severs external intervention, suggesting an internal resolution or fear of exposure. In criminological terms, such wording acts as a gatekeeper, maintaining control over the narrative and preventing outsiders from probing vulnerabilities. Repeated emphasis on privacy, still dealing, and family wishes in police briefings illustrate family-directed communication where disclosures are filtered through the group's preferences. A pattern seen when involved parties dictate terms to shield inconsistencies or protect secrets, effectively turning authorities into unwitting proxies for their reticence. Mapping the family's psychological and behavioral matrix reveals a web of suppression and isolation, starting with Jess, the mother residing at Oak Park with Gus and 1-year-old Ronnie, who has made no public appearances or statements. This emotional suppression could indicate numbing trauma or foreknowledge, where outward calm masks internal turmoil or acceptance. Joshua Lamont, living 100 kilometers away in Bali North and working as a singer under the name Billy T, remains entirely silent and absent from searches, embodying social withdrawal, driven by estrangement or awareness that involvement might draw unwanted attention to his marginal role. Josie Murray, the transgender grandparent sharing the residence, offers the sole direct quote, "You can't help," which criminologists view as defensive dominance, a controlling mechanism to barricade information flow and safeguard internal dynamics. Ronnie, the toddler's sibling, while not actively involved, represents a distraction factor potentially contributing to supervision failure, where caregiving demands relapses that escalate into crisis. Extended family or relatives have similarly vanished from view, with no appeals or participation, signaling collective avoidance. A group dynamic where tacit agreement to stay silent implies shared complicity or fear of fracturing a unified front. Several interrelated psychological models from criminology illuminate these patterns, beginning with emotional incongruence, where reactions fail to match the crisis. Calm in the face of uncertainty often betrays prior knowledge, as seen in classic family concealment cases like those analyzed by the FBI, where parents in denial or cover-up mode exhibit flattened affect to avoid cracking under pressure. Behavioral leakage follows, manifesting as unconscious slips post-event. The avoidance of public pleas, minimal engagement, and cold demeanor leak underlying stress or guilt, akin to documented instances where perpetrators inadvertently reveal tension through reticence, fearing that more interaction invites scrutiny. Defensive isolation encapsulates the family's self-imposed barrier, rejecting cooperation with police or media, a collective strategy in groups harboring secrets, as outlined in NCMEC studies where such isolation delays revelations and protects narratives. High-risk domestic stress underpins it all, with environments like this, featuring separation, gender conflicts, and childcare pressures, quadrupling to sextupling risks of violence or mishaps. Per FBI data, Jess's de facto single parenting, Josie's potential dominance, and Joshua's exclusion form a stress triangle, fostering gray zones, ripe for concealment, much like in profiled cases where fractured homes lead to impulsive decisions amplified by fear. Spatial forensics adds another layer, scrutinizing the Oak Park station's isolated layout, remote, encircled by bushland and sand, 45 kilometers from the nearest highway and 100 from Joshua's home, as conducive to internal incidents without witnesses. The mound and deep hole with a ladder near the play area raise flags for accidental hazards, yet the absence of footprints, clothing remnants, or cries suggests possible cleanup. Delays in thorough interior searches allowed potential evidence preservation or alteration. An existing infant grave on the grounds, unrelated and 8 months old at death, amplifies suspicions of concealment familiarity, echoing patterns where pre-existing burial sites inspire hasty decisions. This spatial setup facilitates near-site disposal, a common tactic in family cases to minimize transport risks, with the property's seclusion mirroring profiled remote homestead incidents where bodies remain hidden for extended periods. The investigative logic chain builds methodically. No stranger evidence eliminates external abduction, no violent signs point inward. The 3-hour gap indicates staging or processing, unified silence suggests coordinated accounts, stoicism implies outcome knowledge, fruitless searches heighten disposal probabilities. This chain, drawn from criminological protocols, leans toward family concealment, accidental or intentional fatality staged as wandering, though full resolution awaits further probes. The most potential possibility. To delve into the likelihood of familial involvement in this perplexing case, we analyzed the investigative progression, media dynamics, and behavioral cues, revealing a shift from public optimism to a guarded focus on internal dynamics that points to a high probability of a domestic event. The overall progression of the investigation reveals a methodical shift from optimism to a more guarded realism, beginning with the initial phase in the first 1 to 2 weeks where authorities in South Australia framed the situation as a random wandering incident. During this period, the South Australia Police, or SAPOL, mobilized extensive resources focused on outdoor recovery, including Indigenous trackers, police dogs, drones, and personnel from the Australian Defence Force, all operating under the assumption that the child had simply strayed from the property. Yet, after 10 to 14 days of exhaustive efforts covering vast terrain without any physical discoveries, no footprints beyond an initial questionable one, no clothing items, no signs of distress, the direction subtly began to pivot, with hints of internal scrutiny emerging as external possibilities diminished. This early confidence in a benign explanation gave way to a broader acknowledgement that something more contained might be at play, prompting a revaluation of the timeline and immediate surroundings. By the third week, the second phase saw an expansion of the search area to over 470 square kilometers, incorporating advice from survival specialists who recalibrated expectations on how far a young child could travel in such harsh conditions. It was here that linguistic nuances in official statements became telling, with phrases like, "We will recover Gus," replacing "Find Gus," signaling a transition from live rescue to potential body retrieval, a change that criminologists often interpret as an implicit admission that survival odds have plummeted. Concurrently, communications evolved from broad public appeals for search volunteers to a more family-coordinated approach, where all outgoing information was vetted through or aligned with the family's preferences, a tactic that maintains public engagement while protecting sensitive investigative threads. This phase also marked the involvement of specialized units, reflecting a growing complexity beyond a simple lost child scenario. The establishment of Taskforce Horizon in the third phase represents a significant escalation, tasked with reconstructing the entire case file from scratch, a move typically reserved for situations where initial rescue efforts yield no results and suspicions of criminality arise. Such task forces and institutional indicators that the matter has been reclassified, at least internally, as a potential homicide or concealment operation, with statements from police carefully worded to avoid alienating key individuals while preserving operational secrecy. For instance, Parishioner Grant Stevens has emphasized the family's cooperation without delving into specifics, a balanced phrasing that allows for ongoing report amid deepening probes. This structured evolution underscores how authorities adapt when evidence stalls, turning inward to timelines, relationships, and potential oversights in the initial response. Media dynamics and the handling of the family by officials further illuminate the investigative posture, with access to the Oak Park site severely restricted throughout the first 3 weeks, preventing direct interviews or on-site reporting. Most updates filtered through APOL press releases or indirect accounts from outlets like Daily Mail, 7 News, and 9 News, creating a controlled information ecosystem typical in cases where family members are under subtle observation to avoid tipping them off to suspicions. Josie Murray's statement to the Daily Mail, "You can't help, we're still dealing with this," exemplifies this guarded stance, a rare direct quote that rebuffs external aid while reinforcing internal processing. This media firewall reflects a closed, investigative structure, often employed when the circle of interest narrows to relatives, ensuring that narratives remain consistent and uncontaminated by speculation. Contradictory language in media reports appears deliberate rather than erroneous, with some bulletins asserting, no sign of foul play, while others cite experts suggesting, third-party involvement likely. A strategy to manage public perception and keep multiple avenues open without committing to one. This ambiguity prevents premature backlash and allows authorities to pivot as evidence emerges, a common tactic in sensitive familial inquiries. Meanwhile, the family's protection from direct media exposure, where police act as spokespeople, relaying sentiments like, the family is absolutely devastated and has asked for privacy, employs spokesperson shielding, a method used when encouraging public appearances might compromise statements or reveal inconsistencies. Shannon Murray's plea to halt online speculation, conveyed through intermediaries, aligns with this, as does the overall narrative that positions the family as victims while subtly monitoring their responses. The hypotheses under consideration by investigators have evolved discernibly, starting with the wandering off theory prominently featured in the first 10 days, bolstered by the remote location and initial footprint discovery. However, this was progressively sidelined due to the lack of corroborating evidence, no trails, no discarded items, no sightings despite flat, visible terrain equipped with cameras and drones, leading to its near omission from updates by the end of the third week. Joshua Lamont's reported fury over the child's safety at the property, as shared by friends, adds a layer of hindsight regret but doesn't revive this angle, given the exhaustive ground covered. The third-party abduction hypothesis serves as a public-facing buffer, maintaining hope and deflecting immediate blame from internals, yet it lacks substantiation. No reports of unfamiliar vehicles, no traffic camera anomalies, no witnesses to noises or disturbances. This makes it more of a formal placeholder than a core pursuit, allowing authorities to sustain community involvement without endorsing it as probable. Fleur Tiver's defense of the family as kind, gentle, reliable, trustworthy, and truthful in interviews counters online theories but doesn't shift this external focus, which remains peripheral. In contrast, the domestic event theory emerges as the most viable under Taskforce Horizon's purview, encompassing not outright murder but possibilities like accidental harm followed by mishandling, concealment, or staging to evade consequences. This sensitive containment approach involves deliberate, discrete progression to preserve public stability and await forensic breakthroughs. With the family's complex dynamics, Joshua's separation from Jess due to clashes with Josie Murray, factoring into potential motivations for internal resolutions. Alex Thomas's comments on the family's endurance of online vitriol highlight external pressures, but the investigative emphasis on reconstructing timelines suggests a belief that answers lie within the household. From criminological and sociological viewpoints, the structure resembles a closed family system. Isolated on a remote farm with limited soul ties and entrenched conflicts, such as those between Joshua Lamont and Josie Murray over parenting and gender issues. These closed units, per criminological models, often internalize crises, distorting truths to protect the group's integrity, as seen in the unified reticence here. The collective silence phenomenon, where no one, not Jess, Joshua, Shannon, or Josie, issues direct appeals, embodies a sociological self-preservation mechanism. It's not necessarily equal guilt but a shared stake in concealing vulnerabilities, amplified by the property's seclusion. The presence of Josie Murray as a transgender figure introduces cultural and gender dimensions, potentially influencing how authorities and media tread lightly to avoid bias accusations. As noted by observers, this caution may keep internal probes discreet but doesn't deter them, with records likely incorporating these tensions. Community gestures, like calls to leave porch lights on for Gus, compensate for the family's emotional void, yet as the case lingers, public trust erodes, shifting sympathy to suspicion, fueled by independent outlets like 7 News, True Crime Rocket Science, and the nightly questioning the unusual quietude. Evaluating probabilities based on investigative trends and societal reactions, the family involvement or concealment scenario commands high attention, estimated at the core of Taskforce Horizon's efforts, with a theoretical likelihood of 60 to 70%, grounded in containment strategies prioritizing internal angles. Accidental mishap with cover upholds moderate weight, around 20% opposable subset of domestic events absent direct violence indicators. External abduction or harm ranks low, 5 to 10%, due to evidentiary voids, retained mainly for public optics to avert early familial blame. When a child's absence stretches beyond 3 weeks without traces, pleas, or overt grief, and authorities subtly pivot to recovery, the internal origin ceases being mere speculation, evolving into the operational framework guiding probes. 30 seconds ago, on September 27, 2025, 4-year-old Gus Lamont vanished from the remote Oak Park homestead in South Australia, a sprawling 60,000-hectare farm where secrets seem buried deep. The family's 3-hour delay before calling police, their cryptic refusal of help, and a mysterious infant grave nearby raise chilling questions about a cover-up. Why did they wait so long to report Gus missing? What are they hiding in the Outback's shadows? This is the Gus Lamont case and its prime suspects, the Lamont family. The disappearance of Gus Lamont at the Oak Park homestead in South Australia offers profound lessons about how child-related cases unfold, particularly when family members come under scrutiny. A 4-year-old vanishing in moments, amidst the vast isolation of a 60,000-hectare farm, has ignited intense public and media focus. Investigating family members in such cases is entirely standard, as police must explore every possibility, from accidents and abductions to more complex scenarios. The Lamont family, Jess Murray, Joshua Lamont, Shannon Murray, and Josie face no charges, but their full cooperation with police, as confirmed by sources like Daily Mail and The Nightly, is a necessary part of the process. Yet, their actions have pushed things beyond the norm. A 3-hour delay before alerting authorities, Josie's refusal of help with the statement "help," and their unusual reticence about family dynamics have fueled unwarranted suspicion. These factors, combined with internal conflicts like the tension between Joshua and Josie, paint a complicated picture, making it easy for the public to spiral into speculation. Still, suspicion remains just that, suspicion. Until now, the case lacks a conclusion, with no concrete evidence against the family, as SAPOL has emphasized across multiple reports. The current priority is finding Gus, with hope he is still alive, reflected in South Australian communities' calls to keep porch lights on. Any commentary or criticism at this stage should remain personal opinion, avoiding baseless conspiracy theories, like those debunked by AF Fact Check. Respect for the Lamont family, enduring the pain of loss, is essential. This case underscores that in tragedies involving children, balancing thorough investigation with compassion is critical, ensuring no further harm to those involved while pursuing the truth.